Good company, though. Yeah,
I gotta
today
run.
we're. Go ahead.
I gotta run into the association office here real quick.
Got it. Yeah, we'll give it a couple more minutes. Today I was really going to talk about kind of, what it takes to grow your team and such. I'll wait till you come out of the office and we'll give it a couple more minutes. That way we can have a discussion around it. So a couple things I can talk about, right away as we're, looking at what it actually takes to build a high performing team is, one of the things in real estate, one of the interesting things about real estate is real estate is an industry to where it's a relatively low barrier of entry to get into the business. We go out, we, take a few courses, we pass our state examination, and, lo and behold, they give us a license. But the uniqueness about it is typically they give you no further training beyond, that event, which is I got my license. And, outside of continuing education, there's no real impetus for anyone to get any further education. And fundamentally, I think we all know that's a challenge because real estate is a very nuanced business. So we kind of go out and we watch others do what they do, and we kind of blunder about and we make some adjustments, and we fail in some respects, and failures are always opportunities of learning. So we look at translating those into positive experiences. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. And then we get to a state to where we understand how to do the business ourselves, but we want to duplicate what our efforts are, or kind of how we grow and develop. And that means we look at potentially hiring other people. And hiring other people or creating your brand is a very unique process. Certainly those agents who have less than, let's say, 25 or 30 transactions under their belt, they may not have a complete understanding of market dynamics and negotiating skills and other things that come with the job. So it's a bit more of a problem to think about developing a team. So when we talk about first steps to developing a team, the first one is always to evaluate your experience. Really think about, do I have enough experience to guide someone else to success? If you think about each and every team member you want to hire, and let's just take it from an agent standpoint, those are essentially mini-me's. Those are people who are like you. Those are the people that we're hiring specifically to go out and be performant so that their efforts support and feed the entire team. You may provide them leads, or they may provide their own leads. But the truth of the matter is we're bringing them on as a result of what they can bring to the team. It's not that we're making a new friend or needing a new partner, an ally. We're actually doing things that help us to grow and develop. So, if our experience isn't up to par, if we don't have enough to where we can help that person grow and support their efforts and where they're wanting to go from a career focus, then we might potentially fail as we look at developing a team. The other thing we need to look at is if we feel like we don't have enough experience or that we don't have enough to support the process of building a team, we may want to seek out a coach or seek out a mentor, someone who's got a little bit more skill and experience than we do, or a coach who literally is a person who looks at you openly and helps you to adjust the things that you already do. Those are things that can actually put us on the road to make sure that we are developing strong habits and strong skills in order to develop a team that will be outstanding. We also need to understand all the local laws that exist in the areas that we wish to practice. That's one of the biggest issues of realtors right now. Real estate became a global process. And in that global process, we look across the fence and say, I can work over there now, or I can work over there. And while that is true, theoretically, If we don't understand specific rules and laws and areas that we work that are related to our real estate transactions, that can be highly problematic because we may be familiar with how it works in one area, but it may be uniquely different in another area or areas that we're unfamiliar with. So it's critical that we understand local laws and we're able to communicate those local laws and rules to our team members. Hopefully, our team members may have some knowledge, but as I said earlier, typically we're learning kind of by association. We don't actually learn in a strategic or fundamental way. We kind of learn by association, or we learn by rote in this business. Most realtors don't take the time to educate or re-educate themselves as they go through. And then we also need to evaluate our leadership skills. That's one thing I want to talk about briefly today is our leadership skills and what we consider ourselves to be. A couple of classes ago, I talked about the 5 different stages of leadership and where we sit on that level. But if we don't understand how we're a leader or how strong our managerial skills are or where we have deficits, then it's going to be difficult to lead another agent. Remember, they're always looking at you for guidance. They're always looking at you for a particular focus. And when we have no focus, then they tend to just kind of wander about. And as they wander about, they will eventually leave you in favor of someone who may be stronger or have a different skill set that will allow them to grow and develop. We also need to plan and prepare. If we're forming a team, it's got to be a planned out event. It can't be a random, I think I want a team. It involves developing strategies on how you're going to bring in new team members, what each person's roles and responsibilities are going to be. You're creating a communication plan and creating some accountability features and systems so that, we all know how we talk and communicate with one another. We all know that there's a point of accountability. In other words, there's an expectation from each and every person on your team. And then, how these things are going to be executed. If we're going to be working in areas outside of our primary areas, maybe we might want to think about a stronger referral network. In other words, hiring agents who are experts or agreeing to refer business to in areas that we want to work. So that we can always enlist the highest level of customer service and share monies in that. And again, that money can be shared any way we want. We typically look at referrals as a 20% process or 25 or even a 30% process. But because commissions are 100% negotiable, as are referral fees. So if you've got a customer who's moving to Idaho, Boise, Idaho, you don't know Boise, Idaho, find an agent that you want to work with that you feel is like-minded and refer that to them. And if you wanted to charge 50% for that referral, great. If you wanted to charge 75, great. As long as that agent on the other side felt it was fair and even and equal and wanted to accept that, you're in good shape. But I mentioned I wanted to talk about leadership, right? And again, forming a team is a big decision, and it's not something that we just casually look into. We want to make sure we're fully prepared on how we bring that to fruition. Managing a team takes some work. So when we talk about leadership, there's a type of leadership that I think about all the time, and it's more befitting to the style of real estate that we do, or that most of us do, which is what's called transactional leadership, right? People are motivated by reward and punishment. That's kind of how we live. And when I say reward and punishment, more specifically in a business that is not salary based or not hourly based on how we get compensated, obviously each and every time we have a success, a new listing that results in a closed sale, that's the reward of it. And the punishment of it is, unfortunately, is even though we may feel like we're putting forward effort or doing things to move us forward, the punishment is when we don't get paid, when it seems like we're doing lots of work, but there's no level of reward for that. There's no paycheck, there's no payoff. So, that's kind of what entrepreneurial people are. They are people who are, in a transactional style of relationship or leader, and that transitions to leadership. So, we work best, with a clear chain of command. Most of us do. We all come from a job mentality, but even prior to coming from a job mentality, we had authoritarians like, professors in school, or, teachers in high school, or our religious beliefs and the people who guided those. And our very first people who are in our chain of command were our parents, our siblings, if they're older, right? There was always a hierarchical structure that existed for us to learn and grow and guide through life. We had other people that we could count on to give us additional direction if it was necessary. So once we understand our social systems as far as leaderships go, then we understand how to deal with other people in a more effective way. So, again, you as a leader, if you understand that there's a clear chain of command that exists with you and how your team responds to you, then you're probably going to be a more effective leader and therefore have the ability to develop a more effective team. When people agree to do a job, part of the deal is they can really call out the clear authority. And I know I'm driving this point home quite a bit, but there is that interrelationship that is somewhat subordinate to everybody who works for you or works on your team. You are the visionary. You are the one who is actually building and developing a process or a system to not only benefit you, but to benefit them as well. So when we talk about a transactional leader really works through creating a clear structure to where it's very definite to everyone who works for the team, whether they're the transaction coordinator or the admin assistant or the buyer's agent or an additional listing agent. Everybody's clear as to what their roles are. Remember earlier, I mentioned we as people are motivated by reward and punishment. Punishments are not always mentioned, but they're almost always understood, right? If I don't do this thing will happen. Sometimes we don't even have to mention the negative thing because we automatically know if this doesn't happen, then this thing is going to happen. My light bill won't get paid. I won't be able to put gas in my car. I won't be able to feed my family if I am not performing, if I don't do business, right? So when we're talking about you as a leader and that kind of transactional relationship, which is what we all function under, it's kind of negotiating with that team member what they can expect from you from a compensation standpoint, from a benefit standpoint, what they can expect from, your company as a whole. And this is really where we start to look at articulating our value proposition. So when we're actually letting people know what our worth is and why they need to be with us, and this is why they're compensated in a particular way, then there's a clear understanding of the dynamics of the relationship. Again, without really establishing those, what you've got is a group of like-minded people without a clear understanding of which direction they should go in order to actually grow and develop. So that transactional leadership really allows for full responsibility to be considered by the person who's going to be on your team. If I'm a buyer's agent, this is my expectation, or these are the things that my team leader can count on. I will call each and every lead. I will continue to prospect on a daily basis. I will write a certain number of offers every single day. I will be with clients or customer facing every single day, things like that. Once they understand what that looks like, then they have good, clear marching orders, right? Again, if you think about a job, with a job, all we ever do is trade time for money. That's what a job is. Someone gives us direction. Here's what this is. I need this done by the end of the week. We've got good, clear direction, and we know what the expected outcome will look like for that thing. I will get, $200 at the end of the week for the work that I'm assigned today, right? I'm getting paid for the time that I spent on a particular product, or things like that. And we know that, real estate is definitely more entrepreneurial, and we only get paid for performance. So as you develop your style, as you really look at who you are, understand what your transactional role is or how you as a leader function in that transactional leadership style. And it's really kind of more of a telling style that, assess who you think you are, right? If you're uncomfortable telling people what to do and you're more organic, or you're that type of leader where you just kind of let people do their thing until things don't work, you may want to reassess kind of what that looks like for you. Again, if you think about that transactional style of leadership, it's always based on contingencies. If you do this, then this thing will happen, right? Again, that reward punishment kind of mindset. If you do this, then this will be this. So that's kind of how you want to look at leadership. And then again, there's also a very distinct difference between leadership and management. Managing is making sure things stay in a certain stasis. Leadership is creating a dynamic where people will follow you. Those things are very different. So sometimes we look at ourselves and we say, oh, I'm managing a team. Yes, theoretically you are managing a team, but you're more specifically leading a team. And again, that age-old struggle, leadership versus management. Management typically has, subordinates, people who work below them in a way that is authoritarian and subordinate, right? Versus leadership, a leader is outlining a clear path for people to follow so that there will be growth and a desired outcome. Whereas a manager is, again, sometimes authoritarian. They're vested in the company that they work for. They're not necessarily mindful of the subordinates that work under them. A management style can be transactional, but again, a leader, and sometimes you're a bit of both. Sometimes you're a manager because you're wanting to make sure that the work is focused, that all of the people who work for you or work with you are working in an environment that is something that will support their growth and their development, that they're staying within, budgetary constraints that you've set and followed, that they're working on a natural path to success, those kinds of things. That's management, but again, leaders have followers. All those things are, those things are not mutually exclusive, but as a leader, you really want to have the ability to influence others. Leaders are often charismatic people who, naturally people want to follow them or hear what they have to say. Leaders help people to focus sometimes. Leaders are not typically afraid of seeking out risk, or at least analyzing risk, although they're not blind to some risks being so devastating that it could cause a complete collapse. So look at your leadership style, and that's really kind of the core of my focus today. Is if you think about what you want from your team, and as you assess who you are and why someone would want to be with you and on your team, look at, are you a person who is constantly seeking change? And when you think of change is growth. Whereas, a manager is someone who's just looking for stability. They're looking for stasis. Is it business as usual? That's typically a manager. Managers aren't looking historically at paths of growth and next level things. They're looking at just maintaining the status quo. A leader is always looking for things around change. Leaders are always people, or most often are people who are comfortable leading other people. Managers are people who manage the workflow, right? They have people who work for them, but their primary goal is to manage whatever task there is. A leader is a person who, again, focuses on people. Leaders have followers. Managers have subordinates or people who work for them. A significant difference in that. Leaders are vision focused. They look at the big picture or the long term, whereas because the manager is more task driven, they focus on the short term aspect of that sort of thing. Leaders are visionaries. Managers are people who focus more on the objective. As a leader, you also are tasked with setting direction for your team to move forward. Whereas a manager feels more detail specific, right? More plan specific. Leaders can facilitate strong decisions. Manager makes decisions. And where's the difference, or how does that lie? Leaders can take something and act quickly for a desired outcome, whereas managers typically look at this may or may not be best. It's more of a black and white scenario in managers. Both leaders and managers can have charisma. A leader certainly has charisma. Managers sometimes focus more specifically on their authority or their role, which is kind of how they look at it. Leaders sometimes are not head thinkers, right? Because they get emotional. And that emotionality is more about passion around the decisions or around the vision that they're making. So leaders tend to appeal to people's heart, that emotional concept, whereas managers are more, or can be more, heady or more, again, very detail oriented around a specific task, things like that. As far as a persuasive person, a leader is more of a kind of a selling person. A leader can sell a vision so that someone else can also subscribe to that passion that they have, versus a manager who's more of a telling task. I need you to do this today. That's more managerial in terms of process, versus a leader who's like, you know what, and this is going to be this thing, and it's going to be the greatest thing at the end of the day. That's kind of the difference between leadership and managerial styles. Leaders are often excited to come to work, and again, it's because it's performance based. Whereas in that manager role, again, we get paid money for our time to perform a specific action, right? And that's more repetitive or redundant. And there's often not much excitement when we see a lot of repetitiveness, right? But for a leader, each and every day is new and something that adds to the story, or to the journey. Leaders very often want the success of achieving something, whereas a manager kind of focuses or are more results oriented. And again, you don't have to be one or the other. You overlap the two, both a leader and a manager. But again, when you're assessing how you're wanting to build your team, you really want to look at, are you coming from, a point of stability? Are you someone who can focus on change and inspire change in others? I'm going to put a pin in it for there today. That's a concept that I want you all to really kind of take a look at, take advantage of, see where you fit on that scale. And I will resume this next week, and we will go into our next stage of what it takes to build a high-performing team. As always, guys, I appreciate your time. I appreciate your participation. I will see you next week. Thanks so much.